Hi there. In today's video, I'll cover the steps for programming a DMR. The HT I'll be using is a TYT Model MD UV380, and that is this radio here. You may recognize this video from, I think it was episode 2, where I was talking about HTs on a budget, and this is a DMR that I had chosen because I thought it was a good price point to get into DMR. I believe this radio retails for around $115. I believe you can probably get it for a little bit cheaper than that, but it was a good starter radio for DMR. Currently, Chirp doesn't have a version of their software for programming DMRs. There is an RT Systems offering for this HT, and you can purchase that software and programming cable from their website for approximately $35. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of the RT Systems software for this radio, so I'll be demoing how to program it with a customer programming software I downloaded for free from radiooddity.com. Although I'm demoing a specific radio and software, the concept for programming this radio is comparable to what you'll encounter when programming other DMRs. Programming a DMR is more complicated than that of the analog HTs I've previously demoed with Chirp and RT Systems. This video isn't an in-depth explanation of everything you can do with a DMR. This video is intended as a high-level walkthrough of the process to provide you with the basics. In addition to this video, I've posted a blog on the PCJ website that is a more detailed programming tutorial, and I'll leave a link to that blog in the description below. The reason I'm splitting up the information between a high-level video walkthrough and a blog is to prevent this video from being an hour long. I know that videos on programming radios aren't very exciting, and my concern with a video that long is it would be information overload for the viewer, and you would probably get very bored if you aren't already. And with written documentation, you can build a code plug at your own pace without having to rewatch this video multiple times. So hopefully, between this walkthrough and a blog, it'll make the programming experience a little bit easier on the audience. Before I demo the customer programming software, I wanted to cover some information from a high level. And as mentioned, the things that I'm going to talk about are covered in a lot more detail in the blog. But I wanted to discuss briefly just some of the networks that are available to you, some terminology as it pertains to setting up your code plug, the tiers functionality for DMR, and I believe one of them is also kind of equipment related. But I'd like to start with what is DMR, and it's an abbreviation for digital mobile radio. And from a high level, it's a network of digital repeaters and hotspots that pass traffic via TCP/IP. DMR isn't a cheap area of radio to get into. You can find some affordable offerings like this UV380, which, as I mentioned, retails for around $115. And it did come with a programming cable, and I thought that it was an appropriate price point to enter DMR on a budget. As far as some of the networks that are available, there's several available for amateur radio use, such as Brandmeister and the DMR Mark network. And those two in particular, I believe, do share some talk groups between them, and I'll talk in a little bit more detail about what talk groups are. But other available networks include, but it's not limited to, TGIF, DMR Plus, and DMR UK, just to name a few. There are several others out there. And some of the terminology you'll want to familiarize yourself with. One of them being code plug, which is a data file that is loaded to your radio, which contains all of the programming information for that HT. The main parts of a DMR code plug are the contact list, channel information, and zones. You'll also see a reference to color code when you're setting up your channels. So those don't have anything to do with color. It's like a CTCSS or tone code, and the purpose is to prevent interference between repeaters with overlapping coverage. When programming your DMR, you'll want to ensure you have the correct color code because it will be required when accessing repeaters in your area. You can usually obtain a repeater's color code from the repeater owner, and sometimes that information will be posted if the owner has a website or if the repeater is operated by a club. That information is also on resources like repeaterbook.com. Regarding talk groups and digital contacts, there are thousands of talk groups around the world and all have an assigned network ID. And these talk groups are parsed out into several categories like countries, languages, regions, and states. The first element of the contact list is the talk group name, and that's where you assign names for specific DMR groups. The second is the talk group number, and that is the number assigned to each group. You'll also notice call type, which will always be labeled as call group. The channel information is where you specify frequency, talk groups, color codes, power levels, and other relevant details. Zones is the portion of the code plug where you group related channels together. When setting up your zones, you can put them into groups for local repeaters, simplex channels, etc. Another term you'll see is hotspot, and that's a piece of equipment that interfaces between your HT and an internet connection. And the purpose of a hotspot is it acts like a repeater and is useful for when you're not in RF range of a DMR repeater. And lastly are the tiers of functionality. DMR has 3 levels or tiers that allow manufacturers to develop equipment geared toward different types of use cases. An example would be if users needed a simple solution where each radio is able to communicate with other radios in a network. Another use case may include the need for an encrypted network or the ability for remote programming. A piece of information you'll need when programming a DMR code plug is a radio ID. If you don't have an ID, you can obtain one from radioid.net, and I'll leave a link to that website in the description below. I have the customer programming software open and I'm sharing my screen, and I wanted to make a brief note about the software. As mentioned, it's a free version I downloaded specific for my TYT radio. I don't want to be too critical of the software because it is free, but I want to point out that it can be buggy. And what I mean by that is I've had instances where I'm programming my code plug and the software will crash multiple times in a row. So if you're using a free version like this one, just be aware that you may run into that. And for something as complex as programming a DMR, you may want to consider purchasing something like the RT System software and their programming cable. After you receive your radio ID, you'll enter it into the code plug. The ID field in this version of the software is found under General Settings. After clicking General Settings, you can enter your DMR ID into the radio ID field. For the purposes of this demo, I'll use a generic ID, and I'll type in 1234566. The radio name field can be whatever name you want to give to the radio. I'll title this one Radio 1. You can leave these other settings in their default statuses. I won't go into detail about each one since we're focusing on the basics. If you would like to assign certain functionality to the buttons on the side of the radio, you can do that by clicking on the Buttons Definition menu and you have the option from some drop-down menus to select the functionality and decide if you want it to either be a short press or a long press. How you set this up, of course, is at your discretion, but that is there in case you want to set those buttons up. For this demo, I randomly selected a repeater I found in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. The repeater's receive frequency is 443.1750, has an offset of 5 megahertz, and the color code is 1. This particular repeater carries the following. We'll start with setting up a channel by selecting channel information and then clicking on the default channel 1. The first channel name will be Oklahoma Worldwide All, and it will be abbreviated as OKC WW All. So I'll put that name in now. Since this is a digital repeater, I will select digital under the channel mode, and you'll select that unless you're programming an analog repeater. The bandwidth is going to remain at 12.5 kilohertz. Using information that I got from the DMR Mark website, I'll enter the frequency. So it will be 443.1750. And as mentioned, the offset is it's plus 5 megahertz. So the frequency will be 448.1750 megahertz. Okay, we have our first channel created, and the next thing you'll want to do is set up your zones. And you can do that by clicking on Zone Information and then Zone. And you may see a default zone, but you can name it whatever you like. You can name it by your local area, county, or state. I'll title this one Oklahoma. And as you can see, the channel we created, Oklahoma City Worldwide All, is already in this channel member A column. As you create more channels, you'll see them in this available channel column, and then you can click on a channel and add it to either the channel member A or channel member B columns. The next area of the code plug you'll want to program are the digital contacts, which establishes the ability to program the RX channels. Whether you're using one of the many DMR networks available like Brandmeister or the DMR Mark networks, or a local repeater, you'll need to set up your digital contacts. So you can click on Digital Contact. And for this one, I'll name it Worldwide All. And this will be used on every one you use for Worldwide All. The call type is going to remain group call, and the call ID is 1, which matches what the website information for this repeater has listed. Now I'm going to make another one, and I'm going to click Add. And we'll title this one Worldwide English. The group call is also, the call type is also group call. And for this one, the call ID is going to be 13, which again also matches the information that we got from the internet. Now that we have our digital contact set up, we'll go back to the channel we created and enter the digital data. and I'll click on OKC Worldwide All, and the digital data is in this right side of the window. And the first thing that we'll do is under the contact name from the drop-down, select Worldwide All. And from the repeater slot, we want repeater slot 1, which it's already set to that by default. And we also want color code 1, which it's already set to 1 by default as well. Now what we'll do is we'll set up another channel, and this one will be for OKC Worldwide English. And we're just going to copy this information and paste it into a new channel. And how you do that is left-click on channel information and right-click Add. You can go to the OKC Worldwide All channel by left-clicking and then right-click Copy. Click on Channel 1, the new channel that you created, and click Paste. And as you can see, that pasted all of our channel information from OKC Worldwide All. And what we're going to do is we're going to title this one OKC Worldwide English. It has the frequency information that we want. And from the contact name, we're going to select Worldwide English. The color code and repeater slots are going to remain the same. And basically you can continue this process for all of the group calls listed in the respective repeater you're programming. I won't program the others that are listed for this particular repeater, but those are basically the basics for setting up your channels, zones, and digital contacts using the information provided for a given repeater. After you have the code plug programmed, you may want to create a scan list. And you can do that by clicking on Scan List, and then you can either rename it or create a new one. But on this code plug, the default is titled Scan List 1, and I will click on that and just rename it. We'll just call it OKC. And then once you do that, you can go back into your channels, and under the scan list drop down, you'll see the scan list that was created, which in this case it's OKC, and I'll select that one. And basically I've just assigned the channel to that list. Once you've finished configuring your code plug and you're ready to upload the data to your radio, there's a couple of ways to get there. You can either click the right button and a window will pop up, or if you go to Program from the menu and from the drop-down select Write Data, the same window pops up, and if you click OK, you will see a progress bar, and once it completes, that means the data has successfully written to the radio. Well, that's all for this video, and if you want a more detailed tutorial on how to program a DMR, then don't forget to check out the blog. Thank you for watching.